Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Shane Beamer, the South Carolina Gamecocks landing another commitment coming out of the transfer portal. Former Ball State cornerback Myles Norwood committing to South Carolina. Now, if you're a South Carolina fan, I think what should fire you up the most is this was clearly South Carolina's guy at the cornerback spot in the transfer portal. Now, I look at the cornerback room and say it wasn't a glaring need for South Carolina heading into 2025 when you look at guys like Judge Collier and Vicari Swain, guys like Jalen Kilgore at that nickel spot. To me, I look at that secondary, specifically the cornerback spot, and say South Carolina is going to be just fine in 2025. I think Shane Beamer and the staff probably wanted to add a little bit more of an experienced body into that cornerback room. Myles Norwood was clearly their guy. I mean, they didn't take a ton of cornerbacks on visits over the last couple of weeks. Myles Norwood, to my knowledge, is the only cornerback that visited South Carolina. So, South Carolina spent a lot of time doing their due diligence with a guy like Myles Norwood, felt really good about him as a target. And then they go out and get him. And for lack of better terms, South Carolina gets their guy at the cornerback spot. And you look at that cornerback room and say, feel really dang good about not just the cornerbacks, but what the secondary is going to be in general. And this is where I have to give the South Carolina fans a ton of credit. I was hard on the South Carolina secondary after the 2023 season, a year that we all thought that secondary would be really good. And it kind of, I would say, underperformed expectations. And a lot of the South Carolina fans in the comment section said, hey, the secondary wasn't as much the problem as the pass rush was. If our defensive line can't really get any routine disruption or pressure on the cornerback, it puts our secondary in a really good spot. Well, I don't think it's a coincidence that the pass rush goes in the right direction in 2024. The numbers in the secondary follow suit. I think that the better pass rush you get, the less pressure it is on a secondary. Look at South Carolina's pass rush in 2025. Look, as long as Dylan Stewart's on this team, the pass rush is going to be damn good. And now you got some really good cornerbacks to pair up with it. The South Carolina defense in the 2025 season looks to be a very good unit. Now, are there still some holes that you probably want to address? Yes, on the defensive line and probably the off-ball linebacker spot. We're going to talk about those positions in just a sec. Now, before we get into Myles Norwood, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the South Carolina fans. The amount of support y'all have shown the fellas over the last couple of weeks has been nothing short of amazing. It's been a blast of a team to talk about. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Myles Norwood. Now, you look at Myles Norwood, I think the thing you like the most, this kid is battle-tested, right? 57 targets, only gave up 33 catches. That's just around a 55% completion percentage when Myles Norwood was targeted. This is a guy that, even if you didn't have bona fide starters at the cornerback spot coming back, which I think South Carolina does, you look at Myles Norwood and say he's going to play meaningful snaps for South Carolina in 2025. And we talk about this all the time. You look at South Carolina and what their aspirations are as a football team going into 2025. It's not just to play 12 games. You want to play 12 plus games. You want to compete for an SEC championship, and you want to make it to the college football playoffs. This is a team that very well had a good argument to make the college football playoffs in the 2024 year. If you want to play your best football in the month of November and December, you better be deep. And although I don't know if Myles Norwood comes in and starts right away, you kind of know he's going to play a lot of snaps for South Carolina, and you want your 2s and 3s not having that much of a drop-off from your starting guys, especially on the defensive side of the football. Myles Norwood, I think, makes sure of that. Now, where does South Carolina go from here? We've talked a lot about wide receiver, and South Carolina's been players for wide receivers. They've made it very clear they want to add they want to add wide receivers, and they want to add specific kinds of wide receivers. Most importantly, wide receivers that can work vertically down the field are big bodies on the boundary. I think you probably have your wide receiver one on the roster and Nick Harbor. Like we always say this about Nick Harbor, that light was flickering in the back half of 2024. If that light turns on in 2025 for this kid, the sky is the limit. You don't see Nick Harbors growing on trees. Mazeo Bennett, I think, is going to be a really, really good second-year wide receiver. You probably want to continue to lean into some of those bigger bodied wide receivers that can work vertically down the field. A name that just hit the transfer portal that, as a Wake Forest alum, I've seen this kid play a lot. Donovan Green, former top 200 national prospect coming out of North Carolina, commits to Wake Forest when Donovan Green's been healthy. He's been a really good football player. The story for Donovan Green is he just has not been able to stay healthy. I mean, 6'2", 210, really, really explosive athlete for the size. A healthy Donovan Green is a difference maker in the SEC. I'm fully confident of that. Donovan Green hits the portal from the state of North Carolina. I wouldn't be surprised if South Carolina comes calling. I mean, he went after his teammate in Horatio Fields. I'm sure when you were watching your film on Horatio Fields, you probably saw Donovan Green play a little bit too. So you're probably familiar with his game. I think this one would make a lot of sense in terms of the type of wide receiver that South Carolina is looking to add. Now, the other position on offense is the running back spot. South Carolina took a really big swing at Justice Haynes. That was really the only running back that South Carolina went after in the portal. It sounds like he's going to go to Michigan. There's a couple of guys that I think we talked about. Tyree Walker being first and foremost the guy that I'd be looking at and saying, man, Tyree Walker on the South Carolina offense, I think would make a lot of sense. A violent, downhill, muscle hamster running back that has carried the football a lot, doesn't fumble. Those are all things that Shane Beamer, South Carolina, are looking for. Similar to how we talked about with the linebackers, I wouldn't be surprised if Shane Beamer and the staff are just being patient and saying, hey, we're not going to go and get into bidding wars on guys early for guys that we don't even know if we love. Let's be patient. Let's see what it looks like after the college football playoffs wrap up. Let's see what it looks like after the bowl games wrap up. Let's see some names trickle in, and then we'll decide when we want to be aggressive. But that calculated aggression, I'm a fan of, because you look at South Carolina, they're not desperate for players. Like, you got a lot of good players coming out or staying on this team going into 2025. I think, to me, the bigger conversation you're looking for is, how can we put the cherries on top? How can we take this team that was playing like a top 15 team in the country, arguably playing like a college football playoff team? How can we put the cherry on top so that in 2025, national championship caliber team? Because I know that's aggressive aspirations. That's, I guarantee you, the mentality within those walls. Like, with Lenore Sellers at quarterback, Shane Beamer recognizes an opportunity that you can be really dang good over the next couple of years. Go capitalize on it. I think that's what South Carolina will do. They're just being patient, waiting for guys to hit the portal that they do like, and then we'll go after it. I mean, you saw, if there's a guy that South Carolina likes, like Justice Haynes, they are going to swing big. I think they're just being patient and waiting for the guys they really like. Donovan Green, I think you could get a really good player on quote-unquote discount because he hasn't played a ton with injuries. I'd take a stab at this kid any day of the week. When he was early in his career at Wake Forest before the injuries came, this kid had every attribute to be a really special wide receiver. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.